It's all about the Macro Productions.
What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Look, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Dave on NBC.
Jack Marius Tack Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Muammar Gaddafi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles in Fort Lauderdale.
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the CS hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, Macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard. I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you're watching us on Rockfin or Rumble or listening wherever podcasts are served, thanks a million. We appreciate the support. We couldn't do it without you. Have you rated the show? We certainly would appreciate a 5-star review if you think we've earned it, of course. Macroaggressions.io is the best place to connect with me. That's the website. You'll find out everything about the books and the podcasts and all that good stuff. We appreciate our sponsors so much. EMP Shield will give you access to a device that will work on your car, on your motorhome, on your home. If you've got a generator, it'll work on that. If you've got a boat, whatever. You can install EMP Shield. It installs like a Type 2 surge protector with just 4 wires. It's pretty easy to do it. You can do it yourself. Go to empshield.com, read up about it, see what you think. If you find something there that you like, use the discount code MACRO to save some money on your way out. And if you bundle and get more than one device at the same time, I think that brings it down, the per unit price down considerably. So consider doing that. Take a look. See what you think. Go to empshield.com, promo code MACRO. And also to our friends over at Chemical Free Body that make the best supplements around. They can get you hooked up with Green 85 that will lean you out pretty good if you bundle that with put that in the detox bundle. I've done it twice. It works. There's no doubt about that. So if you're in a position where you want to take control of your health and you don't know where to start, go to chemicalfreebody.com. Take a look around. Read up about it. You can listen to Tim James' podcast and get some tips from him. You can sign up for coaching with him. You can get Pat Militich's Super Soldier formula that Tim is making. You can get Dr. Keith Muller's Nano Silver. We had him on a couple of weeks ago to talk about that. I bought 3 of them after that conversation. I went, as soon as we got done, I went to my other computer and ordered 3 of them. So take a look, see what you think. chemicalfreebody.com, discount code MACRO. Okay, well, now that we got the business out of the way, I'll tell you what. Peter Thiel is in the news in a coordinated manner. That should make anybody suspicious. This guy is dangerous. He's never been on our side. For a while, he kept a low profile, and nobody really knew a ton about him, except that he was a little different. He didn't fit into the box that a lot of the traditional tech guys did fit into. Yes, he was in Silicon Valley and Stanford, and he came out of that. He had the pedigree to flow right into Silicon Valley and take off. But he's got an interesting component to him. He's a he claims he's a Republican. Well, at first he claimed he was a libertarian, but I mean, there's nothing libertarian about the stuff that Palantir is doing. We're going to get into that. And he's a gay libertarian / Republican, which doesn't make any sense. All three of those things don't go. I mean, he's in not a lot of overlap in this Venn diagram, right? Peter Thiel's kind of out there by himself. And one of the things I wanted to do after the Rogan episode came out is I want to dig into a little bit more about who this guy is, because 3.5 hours on a podcast, where he ums and ahs his way through an interview, it only tells you part of it. You have to kind of look into, this guy's got a long history. This goes back 30 years. You can follow what he's been doing, what he's been up to, and then you decide. You decide if what he's talking about on Rogan is compatible with what he does. You know, there's actions and then there's words. And boy, you know, I watched the 3.5 hour Rogan interview with Peter Thiel so that you don't have to. But if you want to catch a more condensed version, you can go out and there's an hour-long compilation video that's put together of Peter Thiel's interview. The 3.5 hours is broken down into 1 hour, and that 1 hour video is just Peter Thiel saying and doing his whole, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's Asperger's. I don't know if it's a mild form of autism. I don't know if he's just bad on camera. But Peter Thiel is horrible in interviews. It is excruciating listening to that guy try to get to a point on something. I'm a co-owner of a media training company. I will tell you, I will take a 15-year-old Sidney Crosby over a 55-year-old Peter Thiel. Sidney Crosby, for those of you who don't, I will take a 15-year-old kid who is going to be a future Hall of Famer. When we were working with him, I mean, I'll make this offer to Peter Thiel. I'll get my partner on the phone. We'll work with you for free. You need to come. Our media training service will get you ready to be on camera. You're unprepared for these interviews. I mean, listen, man, if it's good enough for Eli Manning, Alex Smith, Cam Newton, Carmelo Anthony, Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin, Eric Johnson, the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, Gatorade, Nike, the U.S. Army, and about 200 other corporations, it'll be good enough for you, Peter. So I'm telling you right now, reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with my partner. He'll get you sorted out. But during this interview with Rogan asks a very, very simple question. Is climate science a real field? And Peter Thiel's answer is 60 seconds of Tourette's or stuttering, or I don't know what was going on. All he had to say was, no, it's not real. But of course, he can't say that because he's on the steering committee of Bilderberg and he's a member of the World Economic Forum. And of course, they're pushing this bullshit climate science, which he knows is nonsense because he's bad on camera, but he's a smart guy. He's off the charts smart. There's no doubt about that. His brain is processing too many possible answers before it comes out of his mouth, or he's got, more than likely, he's just got a lot that he's hiding. He's got, there's a lot he probably can't say. There's a lot that he probably could say, but his brain won't work well enough to allow the words to come out of his mouth. It is really rough to listen to him. He talks about AI passing the Turing test, which is Alan Turing came up with this test to determine whether or not, like, you get to a point where it's indistinguishable from humans, right? So they got into that. They talked about another, this was one story I thought was interesting. Peter Thiel talks about this thing called the werewolf game, and how where they set up this game where you were either a villager or you were a werewolf, and they sort of assigned, the villagers didn't know who the werewolves were, and everybody was sort of assigned their positions, and then the werewolves had to kill the villagers. It's an interesting thing, but basically the point of the game showed that an uninformed majority will almost always lose to an informed minority who is able to conspire and work together. Sound like the United States government to you? Yeah, they are definitely they are definitely in the minority, and they're definitely conspiring against us. So I think that it's important for us. We need to get clear on who this guy is, who Peter Thiel is, besides just, calling him a dangerous libertarian/Republican billionaire with cosmic clearance. This is a guy who runs some powerful companies. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about what he's into. I'm going to get into more specifics into Palantir, one of the many companies that he owns, and we'll wrap up with the future, where things are going for them. And I'll tell you what, this guy's got a deep state background that you just can't even believe, right? So we'll start with his college years. We'll start a little bit before that. He is, of German descent, but he grew up as a kid in South Africa before moving back to the United States. And that's important. The South Africa component is important because when you get into the PayPal mafia, you find out that there are a few other guys that are South Africans, Musk and Botha. Those two guys came out, they're PayPal mafia guys, but they're also South Africans. So you see this sort of, connection there. For what it's worth, I don't know. But it's just something of interest. You don't see it here in the United States. We don't get a lot of South Africans necessarily doing anything. And so when you, of prominence, I guess, in media or anything, there's just not much going on here for them. So when you see a group of them working together, it's sort of noticeable. That's the reason why I bring it up. Not to say that being connected to South Africa is necessarily devious or anything like that, but it's just unusual. These guys, a lot of them came out of Peter Thiel came out of Stanford and Stanford Law School. After that, he went to work as a lawyer and an attorney for Sullivan Cromwell. It's like you don't know too many. Like if you were to name deep state attorney firms, I could probably only name one. It's Sullivan and Cromwell. That's the deep state attorney. That's where you go if you want to, get out of trouble or get in trouble. He started PayPal with Max Levchin, who's gone on to do a ton of companies as well. This was 1998 that they started PayPal. They wound up merging with X.com, which was Elon Musk's banking. It's one of his first Zip2, and then he went on and did X. And that got merged in, lost the X.com name, and just simply stayed PayPal. And then PayPal was sold in 2004 for $1.5 billion to eBay. And through this, when you get the PayPal mafia, they sit down with the big 2-page photo spread for Vanity Fair and do all that stuff. And all things being considered now, looking back on it, they sort of deem Peter Thiel to be the mafia don out of the PayPal mafia. Not Elon. Elon's got about 20 times more money than Peter, but Elon did not leave on good terms with the rest of the guys in the mafia, and therefore is not held with the highest regard that Peter Thiel is. And as soon as, almost immediately, same year PayPal sold, Peter was on to doing a new venture with Alex Karp, and this was a company called Palantir. And Palantir was started in 2004. It currently has it's a publicly traded company. It has a market capitalization of $73 billion as of the recording of this. Peter Thiel himself is the largest shareholder of Palantir, and he has a net worth reportedly of $11 billion. Most people that have watched the movie The Social Network or understand or have heard the official origin story of Facebook, though the official origin story of Facebook is as bullshit as the official origin story of Microsoft, both starting in Harvard dorm rooms by unsuspecting tech nerds as freshmen with stolen technology. Yeah, where have I heard that before? It's Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates' origin story is identical, including the stolen technology. Now, the stolen technology for Microsoft was from Xerox PARC, but the stolen technology for Facebook wasn't actually stolen. It was given to them by In-Q-Tel and the CIA, and that was called LifeLog. We'll get into that a little bit later into what into sort of the origins of Facebook. But for those that remember, Peter Thiel was the guy that came in and bought a 10% equity stake in Facebook for $500,000 and a seat on the board. He retained that seat on the board until just a couple of years ago, even though he sold the bulk. I mean, over the course of the years, he's been selling out. I think he's down to very little, according to his public holdings, he's down to very little shares of Meta. But at the time, his 10% stake, when he cashed it out, his $500,000 turned into $1 billion. So he was, and from his, by the way, just kind of when they sold PayPal, let me find his, well, I'll get to it in a second. I'm just gonna kind of read through a lot of this stuff. So Facebook made a lot of money on that, but didn't just make money on it, stayed on the board and had a very prominent role in that company. He started Clarion Capital. Clarion Capital is a hedge fund. He started Founders Fund with his partner Luke Nosek from PayPal, and Founders Fund goes around and invests in startups that are in early stages, seed rounds, first rounds, things like that. Valar Ventures, that's a venture capital fund. Mithril Capital, that's a venture capital fund. He has second citizenship in New Zealand, even though he's only spent a few days there. He basically bought citizenship there and a pretty crazy compound that he's building there. I didn't hear him talk about that. Rogan asked him, where are you going to go when the shit goes down? And I was expecting him to say New Zealand, because I built a sick-ass compound there that will withstand everything. He didn't mention anything about that, or the fact that he has citizenship there. Ambrosia. He started a company called Ambrosia. Nectar of the Gods, you say? What is Ambrosia? Is it the nectar of the gods? Don't worry, everybody. Peter Thiel just started a company that takes blood from young people and sells it to old people. Nothing to see here, everybody. Definitely not adjacent to adrenochrome or anything. He has Jeffrey Epstein connections. Met with him several times. He talks about Epstein quite a bit in that Rogan episode. I disagree with he just whitewashed. Well, I think Epstein was into this, and I think he was into this. I think this was, there was one component of it that I will agree with, and that was that he said, I think Epstein gets a lot of recognition for the island stuff, for what was going on there, but that's salacious and obviously should be talked about, but that there was more going on besides that. That I will most definitely agree with. And Peter Thiel would know, because he has a lot of people that are friends in this circle. I mean, Epstein didn't just have politicians down there. He used to have a thing called Fun with Physics, and that would be set up by Ghislaine Maxwell's brother, who would come out and set that up. He, of course, they wound up finding him at the bottom of a cliff in France later, but I'm sure he just slipped and fell. But when Peter Thiel's talking about Epstein, I said, well, I met him several times, and the Weinsteins kind of know him a little bit, and they met him several times, and I was sort of, not really connected to him. Well, I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. You just don't have several meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. And again, I'm not trying to say that there was anything like devious with children involved in Peter Thiel. I don't know that. Maybe not. I don't know. But business-wise, and here's the thing. These guys are all starting to get into transhumanism as well. So there's a lot of overlap. Peter Thiel's relationship with the World Economic Forum is well known, and his relationship with Bilderberg is less well known, but it should be. I mean, he's a big player there, and of course, Council on Foreign Relations and all that stuff. Well, Epstein's part of that. Epstein was a trilateral. Epstein was a CFR member. I mean, these guys know each other. He admits they know each other. So he had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The extent of that, I don't know. Maybe we'll never find out. His boyfriend did kill himself. Jeff Thomas killed himself last year, 2023. Thoughts and prayers. I mean, you never want to see that, of course. But when there's a guy as connected to the Pentagon, Department of Defense, the globalist, when I see boyfriends or girlfriends or spouses killing themselves, I don't default and say, oh, well, again, must have maybe fell asleep in the bathtub. My mind automatically goes to the worst place. And then you have to explain it to me. You have to explain to me how how it definitely was, I don't know. I've got a tinfoil hat on permanently. What can I say? When people close to prominent people kill themselves, I ask questions. I don't think that's unreasonable. He was an investor. Peter Thiel is an investor in Reddit. He started the Thiel Foundation. Here's an interesting sort of curveball. He supported Ron Paul. Okay? This is where he gets that libertarian sort of connection where he's like, well, I supported Ron Paul. Well, you also financed J.D. Vance. So what are we talking about here? Ron Paul isn't running for office. Ron Paul ran for office 20 years ago or 2008, whatever. But so what have you done since besides create one of the spookiest deep state software companies on the planet? Right. So I think Ron Paul would be revolted by Peter Thiel. That's what I think. But he's a member. I mentioned he's not just a member of Bilderberg. Peter Thiel has been going to Bilderberg every year since 2008. He's not just a member. He's on the steering committee, and the steering committee picks who gets to go to Bilderberg. So he's the guy with the clipboard in front of the nightclub. We've talked about this before. You got to be on the guest list. If Peter puts you on the guest list, you're in. If he doesn't, you're not. So he's got pull. That's why they call him the PayPal Mafia Don, because he's been doing this a while and he knows everybody. He financed J.D. Vance $15 million in 2022. Did you know that Peter Thiel is an FBI informant? No, it's no surprise, right? You shouldn't be surprised. He's in so deep in the deep state. I can't even see, he's so down that hole, I can't even see his ankles. So for him to be an FBI informant is not even the slightest bit surprising. I would assume they're all that. But his early background after Sullivan and Cromwell was he was a derivatives trader for a while. When he was in college, he started the Stanford Review newspaper. This is a guy who does. He's a doer, not a talker, right? And he actually mentions that in the Rogan thing, that talking is a substitute for action. And that he in his particular case, he's really great at action. He sucks at talking. He should be acting and not talking, if it were up to me. He's an investor in Rumble, so I suppose that I have to thank Peter Thiel for the whopping payment I'm eventually going to receive once my ad revenue from my Rumble channel reaches it. Last time I checked, I had been monetized on Rumble for about 8 months, and I had made $7, I think. So I'm a little bit more, everybody. Just a little bit. Keep watching those ads. I'm hoping to get to $10 by the end of the year. Fingers crossed. And if you recall, when Hulk Hogan sued Gawker, the magazine Gawker, online magazine Gawker, for publishing photos of him with his, I think it was girlfriend at the time. I think he wasn't married anymore. Anyway, it was a huge problem, and Hulk Hogan wanted to sue Gawker. And Hulk had been wrestling for many years, but he had apparently spent the majority of his money on other things and did not have the bankroll to finance the sort of legal team that you would need to go after a media company such as Gawker. But Peter Thiel had a problem with them from years ago. You see, they outed him as being a homosexual, and he did not appreciate that. And he had always wanted to get back at them. So his best way to do that was instead, he didn't have a case against them because he couldn't really sue them for that. So instead, what Peter Thiel did is he said to Hulk Hogan, I will finance your lawsuit against Gawker. And they did, and they won, and they put Gawker into bankruptcy, and they put Nick Denton, the owner of Gawker, into personal bankruptcy. So again, you have to understand who this is. Now, this is just a lawsuit. It's not like Peter Thiel took him out back and shot him, but it might have been on the list of possible things to do. But he bankrupted him and sent the message to everybody that if you fuck with me, I will come after you, right? So that is a little indication as to who this guy is. He's very sort of calm and soft-spoken and very twitchy and annoying to listen to. And you may be lulled into some false sense of security that this is just some kind of nerdy guy who's likes to build companies but is uncomfortable maybe in the spotlight. No, it's all bullshit. He's a partner at Y Combinator, which is like oh boy, how would I describe Y Combinator? Silicon Valley, it's an event. It's a group that encourages young inventors to submit their projects, and a bunch of really powerful Silicon Valley networked individuals will take a look at those things and see if they want to get involved. I don't know. It's a big deal in Silicon Valley. I kind of did a bad job of explaining it though. So, and of course, I think it's worth noting, sort of like wrap up with this itemized list of things that I couldn't help but notice when I dug into Peter Thiel's past that he has a philosophy degree from Stanford. And I just wonder why or how he reconciles this God complex he has with his philosophy degree. Or maybe he thinks he's doing the right thing. I don't know. Let's talk a little bit about his business deals. Over the past, he's done a lot. There's been a lot, and I'm gonna talk about some of the big ones, and then I'm gonna talk about what Founders Fund has been involved in, and these are investing in companies that you will just shake your head and go, "Oh my God, he's got interest in that too." Yeah. So launches PayPal in 1999, merges it with X.com, takes it public in 2002, and almost immediately after they took it public, eBay just kind of came in and just said, "We'll just take it off you." In October of 2002 for $1.5 billion. Peter Thiel walks away with $55 million in that transaction, and by the end of that year, by the time that is wrapped up, he's already taken that money and putting it into other things. He put $10 million into Clarion Capital, his hedge fund, focusing on the oil industry. At one point, it was worth billions of dollars, Clarion Capital. It's still worth a lot, but it was, they went through a huge spike. I mentioned Facebook. He put $500,000 into Facebook, or In-Q-Tel book, or whatever you want to call it, and served on the board for 17 years. Founders Fund. Founders Fund is his venture capital fund that he started with Sean Parker, former president of Facebook. Again, if you see the social network, that you know who Sean Parker is. One of the guys that started Napster was Sean Fanning, but he also was one of the early guys in Facebook. He was the first Facebook president. So Peter Thiel, Sean Parker, and Luke Nosek start a company called Founders Fund. Venture capital. They say, you've got money, and you've got money. Let's put it all together, and then let's take that money and use it on early stage startups and find some companies out there that could use our money to maybe grow into what they're eventually going to be. Well, here's a list of the companies that they invested on early on that went on to be something. LinkedIn, SpaceX, Stripe, Quora, Asana, Spotify, Yammer, Yelp, Friendster, Slide, Airbnb, Clearview AI, and all the Y Combinator companies. So if you can't get away from Peter Thiel as you're checking into your Airbnb, or, searching for a job on LinkedIn. It's all there. And the PayPal Mafia, of course, has gone on to there's 17 members of that group, and they've gone on to start 100 companies at least. So this is sort of what he's done. He sprinkles money. He's good at that. He's done quite well for himself. And then in doing, instead of like taking the PayPal money, the $55 million, and blowing it all on whatever, Ferraris and beach houses, he went out and said, I'm going to go put it into all these other, I'm going to put it into VC funds that I start, and then those VC funds are going to go sprinkle money around. We'll see what grows. And they watered a lot of seeds and grew quite a few redwoods out of this one for sure. But let's talk about the most dangerous company that he's involved with, and that's Palantir. Palantir was started, oh, by the way, I'm also going to give you, at the very end, in a little bit, I'll tell you why I named this episode, why I named it The Lord of the Rings in a second. You might be able to figure it out by the name of this company, Palantir. Started in 2004, before he was even done with the selling of PayPal. He already had Palantir's up and running with Alex Karp. It's based in Denver, my hometown, or not my hometown, but my current town. And I've never seen their offices anywhere. That's no surprise. I see Blue Origins. I see all sorts of other tech, McDonald or Lockheed Martin. I see their stuff everywhere. But I've never seen a building that says Palantir on it, probably because they're one of the most secretive companies out there. And once you hear what they do, you'll understand why they are, right? So 4,000 employees. I mean, I think it's not just a secretive company. I'd say it's one of the most dangerous companies in the world, because if they analyze data in a way that puts you under the spotlight, the information that they have on you, they pass off to the military, who then drone strikes you. Okay? This is what Palantir is involved in. 97% of their revenue comes from the Department of Defense, and it's as deep state gets, right? This is the company. I went back and I watched an interview with David Rubenstein, who's the founder of Carlyle Group, one of the most dangerous individuals in the world, interviewing Alex Karp, who I would put in the same category. Listening to these two psychopaths talk about how they view the world and what they're into. You guys know about Alex Karp? Are you familiar with him? You should check him out. I have questions about where he goes to order pizza when he's in the Washington, D.C. area, if you know what I mean. 60 years old, no kids, has a lot of very questionable comments about children. I think a hard drive search of Alex Karp would probably be warranted. I think you'd probably find some things on there that are unspeakable. He claims he just lives out in a shed out in New Hampshire and is an introvert and is very scared of the world and doesn't really like doing all that. And then in the same sentence mentions that he spends 250 days a year traveling the world, going to different Palantir offices so that he can interact with people, so that he can get the heartbeat of what's going on in the company. So which is it, man? Are you an introverted nerd who likes to stay in your Ted Kaczynski cabin in New Hampshire out in the snow away from everybody? Or are you on a plane 250 days out of a year traveling everywhere? I mean, his story is nonsense, because he is a very sketchy guy running a very dangerous company. Okay. He claims, Alex Karp claims he doesn't have security clearance. I don't buy that for a second. I don't believe a single thing this guy says. And I'm not going to be nice about it either, because if it were up to him, he would impose transhumanism, which is eugenics, depopulation, and he would like to see the bulk of society disappear. So Palantir, which is really kind of his baby now. Peter started it with Alex, asked Alex to join the company and start it, or asked him to start it with him. He did. And then, as a lot of these guys do, Elon, Peter, they start the company, they've got their name on it, they put their money in it, but they're running 20 companies, right? So they can't be there day to day. But Alex Karp is, and he's the CEO, and he's been flying around everywhere, guys. Talking to people about, is he meeting with his offices, the people in his office, to discuss their partnerships? Would you like to know who their partnerships are with? The Pentagon, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, JSOC, National Security Council, Department of Homeland Security, Immigration Customs, ICE, Israel, and the United Kingdom. But they won't work with China and Russia because they have standards. That's what they say. So what do they do? What does Palantir do? Well, I'll tell you. They are a software company. And their areas of expertise include data analysis. They're the ones that can take a shit ton of data, process it real fast, and then come to some conclusion from that. Besides data analysis, they are interested in and very good at mass surveillance, military technology, predictive policing. Hello, Philip K. Dick, Minority Report. Warzone analytics. And they've even created software. Do you remember when Edward Snowden was talking about something called X-Keyscore? You know who invented that? Palantir invented it in conjunction with the NSA. They built that together, which is X-Keyscore is the software that I think it was one of the most important components of what Snowden leaked. And they also, this is a little bit more on the retail side of things, but still working with the government. Palantir was also deeply involved in the rollout of COVID. And that's something that you need to keep an eye on. It wasn't just here in the United States. It was also the NHS, because they had a relationship with the CDC and the NHS under something called Project Tiberius. And that was Palantir's project to sift through and find where there were clusters of infections from COVID. Now, if you know anything about COVID, you would know that just the fact that there's software finding infection from COVID is an automatic disqualification. You automatically know it's bullshit, right? Because there is no way to track clusters of COVID except because COVID was basically the flu. It was everywhere, and it was nothing special. When you look at overall excess deaths in 2020 were actually down. There were no excess deaths, and anything that came from COVID was more than likely hospital related and things like that. So I don't know what they think they're doing with Project Tiberius, except they were probably data mining everybody. They're feeding in information about who took the shots and who didn't. Maybe that was happening, but in terms of like who's got COVID and where, good luck with that, right? But it is described as Silicon Valley's most secretive company, and a lot of people don't know too much about it. Yeah, you will know that In-Q-Tel was an investor in it, and I will tell you that Alex Karp is an investor in In-Q-Tel, which is kind of funny. In-Q-Tel is the venture capital arm of the Central Intelligence Agency. They got tired of funding startup companies, and then those startup companies were having to tell everyone that they took money from the CIA. So what they did is they created a cutout organization called In-Q-Tel, which is the venture capital arm of the CIA. It's still all CIA. It's just, it has a different name, and it's a venture capital company. So you don't by default connect that to the CIA. When you hear In-Q-Tel, VC firm, you go, okay, well should be in Silicon Valley. Yeah, but it's in Maryland. So it's because it's connected to Washington, D.C. So that's part of what Palantir does. But I'll tell you what, let's talk a little bit about what they're doing in the Middle East, because, why do I get Eric Prince Blackwater vibes when I hear that Thiel and Palantir are involved in the Gaza targeting campaign? Why do I get that feeling? You remember Eric Prince, right? The founder of Blackwater, and his troops were in Iraq, and they were involved in murdering civilians, and they were tried for that. You remember that? I get the same feeling, except that Blackwater were more boots on the ground, and Palantir is more data in the cloud, but still deeply involved in this. Privatization of war. That's really where we're coming to. War is a racket. Smedley Butler talked about that 100 years ago, but it's more than that. It's the privatization of war through what they're calling public-private partnerships. So it's the government, and the government is theoretically limited in terms of what it can do with votes and approvals from Congress and the people and whatnot. But when you're a government that wants to do something and the people won't allow it, then you can create other organizations, or you can create ways to get around this. And so part of the way that you can start a war without officially calling it a war, which is the reason why President Biden could say, no new wars, I didn't oversee any wars during my administration, except for the drone strikes in Syria and the bombings in Libya and the whatever is going on from time to time that we do in Somalia, and definitely, but no wars were going on, except that we're 1,000 military bases all over the world. So the idea of privatizing war through these public-private partnerships is taking on much more momentum these days, and you're starting to see it. I think that the first time we really got a chance to look at the outsourcing of war was in the Gulf War in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right when Blackwater came in a big push, and then they changed their name 3 times because the publicity was bad. That was the first time people saw this and they went, "Wait, you can go to war as a citizen? You can just sign up and go to work for these guys?" I mean, yeah, you got to have the background, but if you're out of the military and Blackwater wants to hire you and pay you $140,000 a year to go patrol Afghanistan or Iraq with a team of people, yeah, you can do that. when you get murdered in theater, then what happens in Iraq is that they tie you to the back of the cars and they drag you through the streets. So just know that too, right? Like the Blackwater guys that got busted after they killed a bunch of people and then some of them got killed. You know what they did to them? They dragged them through the streets from the back of trucks. Okay. So you can be a mercenary if you want, but you get what you get. And Peter Thiel is deeply, deeply involved in the war that's going on in Gaza right now. Palantir's software is being used to tell the Israeli military which buildings have the most Hamas terrorists in it. There's air quotes on that for those of you listening. And then, which is, I mean, it's got to be the easiest job for Palantir because all Israel wants to hear is they're in every building. Level the place, right? So they're using the data that Palantir is providing the Israeli IDF to make calculations on which buildings to bomb, which is disgusting, of course. There's data wars happening right now, and there's a fight for information supremacy. And companies like Palantir are going to always be protected because even though they aren't technically part of the American government, they're so vital to the DOD that they're never going to let them fall into any sort of scandals or whatnot. They'll protect them. And because they have to win this information. It's an information war. They have to win it, right? And Palantir has the best stuff. They just do. You know, and Karp and Rubenstein get into this conversation at the WEF where they're talking about like why he takes a question from the audience and this guy says like, I've been doing this, I've been using similar things in Malaysia or whatever, and our software, we pay a bunch of money for it and it's just garbage. And Alex Karp is like, yeah, well, that's why we charge a shitload of money for ours, because we do it well. And we just basically say, we do this the best. If you've used other software programs in the past and you're taking a meeting from Palantir, the reason why you're taking this meeting is because you're frustrated with what you've got. We have the best stuff, but it's going to cost you a fortune. And that's what he said. He says, we just charge you whatever we want, but our stuff works. And they pay it. So, Germany calls Palantir a data octopus, according to Alex Karp. Well, he got that right, or Germany got that right. It is a data octopus, and it's hoovering up all kinds of information from God knows where, you know. So when Palantir started in 2004, and it did so with funding from not just Peter Thiel but also In-Q-Tel, which is in a roundabout way, as Alex Karp is invested in In-Q-Tel, and then In-Q-Tel invests in Palantir, and then he goes to become CEO and co-founder of Palantir. What In-Q-Tel did in 2004, besides just giving them money's great, right? But besides the money, they also they just handed them programs to get to work on immediately. And these were programs with the FBI, the CIA, and the Department of Defense. They just handed it to them. So not bad when you start, you're in the process of starting your startup and you're going, I sure hope this does well. I sure hope we have some customers when we open up the shop. And then your investor goes, don't worry. I've got 3 of the biggest customers in the world just waiting here for you to finish getting this stuff ready, open your doors, and then I will just hand them to you, right? So that's how things get done. But do you know what else was happening in 2004? When In-Q-Tel was financing Peter Thiel's Palantir? Well, in 2004, In-Q-Tel was also closing their LifeLog program. LifeLog program was a opportunity for the Central Intelligence Agency, through In-Q-Tel, to build a data platform that would allow people to put up photos and pictures of themselves and information about themselves and share it. And, you know, it'd be kind of like some sort of network, might even be like a social network. But it didn't really do very well, and they closed the LifeLog program in 2004. The same day they closed the LifeLog program is the same day that the Facebook was formed as a corporation. Mark Zuckerberg was activated. Peter Thiel from In-Q-Tel then took the LifeLog program and handed it to Mark Zuckerberg and then bought 10% of it for $500,000. That's how you make $1 billion in America. With stolen technology. Not even stolen. Gifted technology. Gifted to Facebook by the CIA. That's how it happened. Let's talk about Palantir in Ukraine. Their algorithms are working through large data sets. They are looking at satellite technology. They're looking at all the satellite images. They're running that through. They're running phone calls, emails, getting scanned. They're hoovering up as much data as they can in Ukraine to try and, prepare the Ukrainians the best they can to know where the Russians are, or to know where they're going, or where they're going to be, or whatever. Whatever this information, this data is going to, what sort of knowledge they're going to glean from this data dive is then going to be given to the Ukrainians, and it's going to help them manage this war. It's not going well. It's really not going well. And in that Karp interview, you hear him talking about going on and on about how great the Ukrainians are, how brave they are, and how this and how that. And he's just full of shit. I mean, this interview was from a little, I think it was 2022. So it might have, or maybe it was early part of 2020. Anyway, it was at a point where the war was still relatively new. So it was, it wasn't like from last week or anything. So Palantir's deeply involved there, of course. And they also, when Karp said during this interview that Palantir was one of these great military technology companies. And they asked, well, where is America the only place where you find these fantastic software companies that have a slant towards the military? And he said, well, it's not just Silicon Valley. It happens in two other places as well. You want to know the two places he mentioned where you can get great technology? Ukraine and Israel. Interesting choice, huh? The two places that are currently involved in wars. Those are the great places for military technology, they say. So basically what they're, so if you're asking like, well, how does this program work? What does it do? Palantir basically builds the brains of the software, right? And then companies or governments then license that software from them and build their platform, or they build on top of Palantir's platform, right? So Palantir builds the base layer, how it all works and how it's going to sort of sift through the data. The government or the corporation that licensed this then has the ability to bring their developers in and build on top of this. What Karp says is nice about that is once they build on top of it, they're certainly never going to get rid of your stuff because they've just built on top of it. So they're going to continue licensing it for as long as they basically have built a company on Palantir's foundation, and Palantir's charging them essentially a land lease, right? A service fee to be on that. And of course they're just making a fortune doing this. And Palantir's sales pitch to them is, would you like to have this software from us starting tomorrow? Or would you like to build it out yourself over the next 20 years? And of course the government say, well, we don't have 20 years to wait to build this out. And he says, well, you could probably do it if you put a real good team on it. You could probably get it all done in a decade. They said, again, 20 years, 10 years, doesn't matter. We'll all be out of office. We don't have time to do that. We need a solution now. So the solution now is just pay Palantir for it, right? And that's what they do. So on top of this, on top of all of this, on sort of like a kind of side note, I guess, is that besides just the war component to this, one of the things that Palantir has discovered they're really good at, because they can crunch massive amounts of data, is that they are now making a fortune in the ESG industry. And the reason is because the regulators that are trying to track all these companies and see if they're complying with ESG have too much information and they don't know how to make heads or tails out of it. So Palantir is going through all of that data to then tell the regulators for ESG who's complying and who's not. So they track the data and then they rat out everybody who's they're paid for it, paid well. So, and one of the things that Karp mentioned that I had never heard of before was a product that they have out called, they described it as a crucial war product. It's called Meta Constellation. So from now on, if you hear of any sort of talk of a program called Meta Constellation, one word, then that's a Palantir program that's going through and taking a look at war zones and managing the war kind of from the background. They that's their big product that they seem to be able to discuss right now, and they think that that's a game changer for everybody that license their software. But they have standards. They won't do business with Russia or China because they are Team World Economic Forum. So, okay, I mentioned that I would tell you why this episode is named the way why it's named The Lord of the Rings, and the reason is because Peter Thiel is obsessed with J.R.R. Tolkien. And he has named a bunch of he's named all his companies after Tolkien themes. Okay. And Palantir were the crystal balls used to communicate and see events elsewhere, as well as events that happened in the past. They called them the far-seeing stones. So think about that. They named this company Palantir because after The Lord of the Rings, which it was using these balls to see events that other people can't see elsewhere, as well as looking into the past. I'll tell you, when I start hearing about quantum computers and things that D-Wave is doing, opening up parallel dimensions, dragging information back from that, and then Palantir is, I don't know, I just get a little nervous. That's all I'm saying. He has another company called Valar and Valar Capital. These, and in the Lord of the Rings line of, their book series, this is a group of godlike immortal spirits that chose to enter the mortal world to prepare it for their living creations. Okay. Okay. And he goes on. It's not just these. Mithril Capital, Lembas, Rivendell, and Arda Capital. These are all Tolkien themes, right? So Arda was, what was Arda? Arda was a place. What was it? Oh, don't worry, everybody. It was just the flat earth. So he named one of his capital companies at Arda Capital after Arda, which was the flat earth. So you can make that what you will, but Arda invests in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity startups. Dave Weiss, go hit up Arda. See if they'll give you some money to go scale the ice wall down in Antarctica. Mithril Capital, fictional metal from Middle Earth, like silver, used to make armor. They called it gray glitter. And that's the translation of it. It translates to gray glitter. Mithril Capital. Mithril Capital is where J.D. Vance was a corporate lawyer for 2 years and then later took a bunch of money from Peter Thiel to go and run his Ohio Senate race, which he won. And now he is running for vice president. So if he gets into office with Donald Trump, Peter Thiel's guy is going to be right there. Rivendell, fictional city in Middle Earth, in The Hobbit, 1937. It's described as a deep valley hidden away. They speculated that Tolkien based it on Switzerland. He had gone there on a trip and then wrote about this place, and it was basically kind of matched. So think Switzerland in your head, right? And that's part of. I haven't read any of the Tolkien books, so none of this means anything to me. Lembas is food for the elves. Lembas Capital, it looks like it's sort of defunct now. I don't know what they're doing over there, but he's spent a lot of money and invested in a lot of time and effort into a variety of different companies, and most of them are financial related. A lot of capital companies. When you've got a bunch of money and you can just deploy it the way he can. You can take your chances, and every now and then, you get lucky and you get yourself SpaceX's and Airbnb's, LinkedIn, Stripe, Spotify, Asana. I mean, these Clearview AI. Every now and then you get a winner, right? But it did make me think of something. And looking through this, when you get to super wealthy, powerful people that have more money than they can ever spend in their lifetime, and it reminds me of some of the roundtable people, Cecil Rhodes and the like, the Rothschilds that came out of there, all that group, that group of extremely wealthy globalists that have an idea on remaking society in their image. One of the things that you notice when you get into the roundtable of the British roundtable of the late 1800s and early 1900s is that a surprising number of the people in the roundtable were all gay men with no children. And so I asked the question, gay eugenicists with massive fortunes make me very nervous. Not gay people in general, but when you are a multi-billionaire homosexual man who is also deeply involved in eugenics. It makes me think that you don't have a stake in the future. You don't have any kids to leave this planet to. You don't have any, when my daughter was born, my need to care about this planet got reset to now I have to worry about everything for as long as she's alive, right? If it was just me, I'd still worry, but, a case could be made that I wouldn't have the same level of, I wouldn't have a stake in the outcome by not having children left behind, right? So when I notice it's being wealthy is one thing, being a gay man is another thing, being a eugenicist is another thing. But when I see all three of these things lining up together, I get nervous because it reminds me of the Round Table. And when I see Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, both grown-ass men, 160, 155, who are no children, no interest in children. Alex Karp has a very questionable background. Peter Thiel is just a gay man as far as I know. I get nervous. I ask questions. Because depopulation is much easier when you don't have kids. Okay? No need to preserve the future when you really have no stake in the outcome. So of course, put them both on the steering committee of Bilderberg. Two guys with no kids that don't have a stake in the future of the world. Let's put them on the steering committee and let's see what happens, right? What could possibly go wrong? They're also at the World Economic Forum. So they can sprint us right into global tyranny. And also both these guys show up at the Munich Security Conference, but I'm sure that's just a coincidence, right? Doesn't have anything to do with future pandemics that they'll manage, like they did COVID and whatever comes in the future. It'd be funny if these guys are in charge of monkeypox. Peter Thiel is comparing California to Saudi Arabia. He said, they have oil, California has tech. Both have crazy religions, wokeism and Wahhabism. Not that many people believe it, and it distorts everything. Well, I hate to have to agree with him on that, but yeah, he was right in this assessment of everything. Oil pays for everything in Saudi Arabia, so you have to play by their rules, right? If you're part of that family, that's just the way it is. Big tech pays for everything in California, so you have to play by their rules, right? I mean, they're the ones that are financing these woke politicians, district attorneys like, Chesa Bowden and those guys. Soros finances them, and then these guys vote for them. So let's wrap up, okay? Let's talk about the future for Peter Thiel, man. So he may challenge Eric Schmidt for Pentagon artificial intelligence guy, and they're both dangerous. I don't think those guys like the Google guys too much, but I could be wrong. I think there's a little bit of friction between the PayPal guys and some of the Google people. But regardless, they're all on Team America, right? As they're working with the Pentagon to try and use software to remake the world. And I get very nervous when these people are doing that because I don't trust them. They don't want the same things that we want. And especially when you're talking about guys that don't have kids. It's a problem to me. It's not a problem in general, like have kids or don't have kids. But if you want to be in charge of the world, the steering committee of Bilderberg and making these software companies that manage war zones, I need you to have children because having children changes you. It just does. There's no way to be the same person you were before. It does cause you to change your perspective a little bit. Some people, it's rather profound, the change. They really come into it and they go, oh my God, this is what I've been meant to do this my entire life is to be a parent. Other people don't handle the responsibility very well, but it changes you regardless. And I think that should be part of the criteria for this. I don't care what Peter Thiel and Alex Karp think about the future because as far as I'm concerned, they have no stake in the outcome of the future. They're not leaving anything behind except tyranny, destruction, and a digital prison that Palantir will run. Peter Thiel's throwing a lot of money into politics now. I mean, he's J.D. Vance may turn out to be the best investment of his life, maybe even better than the Facebook deal. We'll see. We'll see how that does. It's going to obviously be predicated on Trump getting back into office and Vance doing something. Most vice presidents don't do anything. Of course, there's not a 0% chance that Trump would make it through a second term. So depending on what happens in the future, which Peter Thiel might already know the future, given that he's got these computers that are scraping information from God knows where. He may have a president. He may have invested in himself. It might be the best startup ever. The Y Combinator of politics. Plant some seeds, sprinkle some money all over it, and one of them grows into the president. That would be quite a thing. But look, either way, his software is currently the brains of the Pentagon. So it's already happening. This distortion of reality is already happening through technocracy. And ultimately, you ask, do they want communism? Do they want socialism? Do they want Marxism? No, they want technocracy. And these fucking nerds are going to get us all killed. If you like this episode, you can take the additional step right now. It'll take you 2 seconds of sharing it with your friends and family. Have you rated the show? Just scroll down real quick. Give us 5 stars if you think we've earned it. Macroaggressions.io is the place to go. The website and everything connected to the show.